Hey, for victims and villains, my name is Josh, and today we are talking about Blink Twice, and it is going to get uncomfortable. Blink Twice is the directorial debut from Zoe Kravitz, and this movie tells the story of a group of friends that essentially are trying to escape paradise. And honestly, I am trying to be as vague as possible when it comes to this movie because not only do I think it's one of the most important releases that we've gotten this year, but also it is just a psychological thriller in every aspect of those two words. Like, thriller is normally a word that I associate with something that could be considered horror to some people, but would be like an entry point into horror. This one completely, I would say, is on par with some of the more devastating horror that I've come into contact with. Most people will hear a statement like that and not agree with me, but this movie made me feel incredibly uncomfortable and really opened up my eyes to a lot of things. And I really hope that a lot of people have that same experience, but I also know that someone's going to look at this film and just kind of look at it for entertainment instead of what the film is actually trying to say. The sheer fact that this movie opens up on a trigger warning should set the stage for the entire film moving forward in terms of tone. I think what really helps this film crawl under the skin of its viewers, or at least for me, is the fact that you spend about half the movie in paradise where really nothing out of the ordinary kind of happens or out of the weird happens. It's just kind of a normal, typical kind of like island vacation type of movie. And then it kind of just takes this dark turn, and then you're reminded, oh yeah, there was a trigger warning. This is where that starts to come into play. Like, the tonal shifts happen so late in the movie that it's kind of almost hard to remember that there even was a trigger warning. But I think that's what makes this film as impactful as it does. This film's not going to be for everyone, 100%. It is incredibly uncomfortable. I think it's an important film because of the topics it explores, especially in today's political climate. This is a film that is worth seeing. I think a large portion of the reason why it has such staying power and such charm and deceit also is because of Channing Tatum. You know, I think it's kind of crazy that just a month ago we were laughing at him in Deadpool and Wolverine and just being amazed by him as Gambit, kind of getting to see that long road finally come to fruition. And here he is not only charming and funny, but also at the same time, he is downright terrifying. I feel like he absolutely kind of captures every charismatic trait and every terrifying unknown factor about every person that inspired his character. And with that said, I also think that this movie is one hell of a debut from Zoe Kravitz. Not only does Kravitz absolutely kind of give you this very large in scope, almost cinematic story, it retains a lot of this intimacy and terror at its core at the same time, which is really rare for a story this large by a first-time director. And not only that, but she also serves as a co-writer on this film with E.T. Feigenbaum. And the two of them just have such a masterful way of telling a story and just unleashing this at such a natural pace that there was portions of this where I kind of felt like I was going to end up having problems with the pacing. But once you kind of hit and see where this film is going, you understand the pacing and why it was the way that it is. And honestly, this film kind of feels like somewhat of a master class in storytelling. So Naomi Ackie plays our lead in this, and much like Tatum, she does an incredible and an exceptional job here. I feel like you walk away with Aki's performance just having seen a star in the making. Like, I haven't seen a ton of her stuff, so this was kind of like my first full exposure to her. But damn, do I want to see more. Honestly, like I said in the beginning, and like I've said kind of throughout, this film just has a way of getting under your skin. And this is the first time in a long time that I've left the theater and just had just really uncomfortable feeling all around me. And I honestly think that that is just credit to not only this film, its tone, its atmosphere, the type of issues it's trying to address, which we'll talk about in mental health, but its performances and how it tells its story. But I do have one problem. Ultimately, what kind of boils down to when you think about this film after you've seen it, the majority of the story revolves around Aki and Tatum. And there are elements of this story that they've kind of chosen to kind of broaden so it doesn't kind of quite feel like that. And that's kind of where I have a love-hate relationship with this movie. So I had to kind of go to get IMDb just really quick, just to kind of bring this out because of how large this cast is. Let's get into it. So I think performances from Christian Slater, Simon Rex, Adia Arjona, Haley Joel Osment, Liz Carbella, and that list just kind of goes on. These are the supporting cast that ultimately end up kind of making up the rest of Tatum's kind of entourage or the other people that exist with him on the island. And this really are, all they are is that they're just kind of really one note. Simon Rex essentially plays a guy that just says, "Hey babe," a bunch. Haley Joel Osment plays a guy that essentially just eats every frame that he's in. And then Christian Slater just takes a bunch of pictures. And while there are twists and turns with their characters, they just largely kind of felt like more of the forgettable elements of this film. And I just walked away just kind of really just asking myself, why were they in it to begin with? For one note, there's no development here, and ultimately at the end of the day, kind of make up some of the film's more predictable moments. And again, I wish they weren't predictable moments because where they end up going are largely where this movie becomes extraordinarily uncomfortable. I'm ready to run Blink Twice through our Rorschach rating scale. I'm going to go ahead and give Blink Twice a 4 out of 5. This is a very strong debut from Kravitz. The cast, for the most part, is incredible, but also at the same time, this film's pacing is immaculate. The storytelling is uncomfortable. And I'll even say this once again, this is one of the most important films in 2024, and I think it should be on everyone's watch list moving forward so we can discuss and learn how to grow from this movie. Well, let's talk about mental health. If you guys are new to our content, Mental Health Moment is where we take a theme of mental health out of the film which we're reviewing, talk about it for a few moments in the hopes to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health. And I'm not going to dive too deeply into this week's mental health, specifically because not only do I think this film addresses it incredibly well, much better than I could, and maybe they're speaking from experience, but the film addresses the mental health of people in power and how they use that power to abuse those not in power. But I'm also trying to be a lot more kind of coy with the film, and a large portion of why I think it's not only an important film, but also a film that really just gets under your skin and stays with you. And so I just want to put it like this. If you or someone you know is struggling and you're watching this right now, and whether that's in an abusive relationship or a relationship that is a working relationship or whatever, if there is abuse in that and in any way, shape, or form, whether that is psychological, whether that is sexual, whether that is financial, please click the link in the descriptions below and reach out and start a conversation, whether that is with a hotline, a therapist, or any number of our resources in the show notes below. This is the reason we create this content, so that we can have open dialogues about films like Blink Twice and what they say specifically on mental health and how we will ultimately learn from mental health from these characters. So if you or someone you know is struggling, please click the links in our show notes below. On that note, Blink Twice is now playing in theaters everywhere from MGM Studios and with that, just hit that subscribe button below and have a good weekend.